Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it any mixed? All right. Only by exclusive bhakti it is possible to know me, see me, or directly meet me. Or okay, text 55.
Matkarma Matkarma Madhakata Sangabhajitaha Nirvare Sarvabhutesu Yasamam Eti Pandava. My dear Arjuna, you engage in my pure devotional service, free from other contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation. He who works for me and who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and he who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me.
He who does no. I'll take a Krishna Chakravarti's explanation of text 55. Very brief though, doesn't explain much for this particular verse. What happened? You didn't get a cup?
Yes.
Any other cup?
My cup is this.
There are two cups there. Okay. And his cup? When? How was it? How was it? Acceptable. I don't know. In case somebody wants more, I'm just a little bit frightened. So therefore I keep asking, how is it like? In order to summarize the subject of bhakti, in this verse, the Lord speaks about the general characteristics of various types of devotees who are described starting in the 7th chapter. Sangha means devoid of material attachment. Arjuna understood that his victory on the battlefield was dependent on the great power of Krishna alone. This is the meaning of the chapter. But let me. I cannot keep switching like this every time. We should just have everything within the same Kindle app. You cannot operate it twice. Take application for having taught that exclusive, why I should do this? I will not do it. I will read it out from the printed book. Having taught that exclusive or ananya bhakti is the means of attaining himself, Krishna now concludes. The devotee should act for me, matkarmakra. Doing such service as building and cleaning my temple or cleaning the gardens containing my flowers and tulasi. He should not know anything except me as his goal, matparamaha. Here, it's a look at the words, each one. Matkarmakrit, engaged in doing my work. This is not the same as Varna Dharma, Ashrama Dharma, State Dharma. It's a word that is, we all come across this expression, do the needful. So do the needful under direct devotional service to the Lord comes under that. Like, for instance, building and cleaning my temple, cleaning Krishna's temple. This is all part of that. He should not know anything except me as his goal. He should engage as my devotee in performing hearing and the rest of the 9 devotional processes of the Madhbhakta. He should not tolerate associating with those opposed to me, Sangha, varjitaha. But he should be devoid of enmity to those people opposed to him. Nirvaira sarvabhuteshu. Hatred has no place in Krishna consciousness. So we don't have plans like you don't believe in Krishna consciousness, will kill you, cut your head off, all this tamasic concepts we don't have. Since he considers that the suffering they cause is brought about by himself alone through his previous karmas. Such a devotee attains me, Krishna, in my human form. No one else does. But I need to check whether this translation is appropriate. What is the verse? 55. This is correct. Matpar Maha Mameva Natu Swargadikam Swa Umartham Jana. He considers Krishna alone as his goal, not attainment of heaven and so on. Mad Bhakta, Mad Pravanadi, Navavida Bhakti, Rasa Nirataha. He has a taste for 9 types of devotion service, beginning with hearing about Krishna and so on. Sangha Varjitaha, Mad Vimukha Samsargam Asahamanata. One who cannot tolerate the association of those averse to Krishna. Sarvabhuteshu Nirvairaha, not being inimical towards any creature. Teshu api Mad Vimukheshu Pratikuleshu Satsu Vairashu. Correct. Such a devotee attains me, Krishna, in my human form, human-like form. No one else does. The 11th chapter shows that Krishna is the complete form of God because he is the source of all avatars and he is thus the cause of the victory for his devotees, the sons of Pandu, on the battlefield in Bharata. Bhakti Vinod, I want someone to read it out.
He was struggling without the sea, and who, deprived of desire for the use of karma and jnana, takes bhakti in all activities, and who is merciful to all beings, attains me in my Swarup as Krishna. In this chapter, it is shown that the form of Krishna, more than the form of Vishnu, kind or the Vishnu, should be taken filter of. Except the Swarup form, the devotee has no need for all the relative forms. The form of Krishna alone, which is an ocean of all sweet rasa, is the only shelter of the highest sweet of bhava. That is the essence of this chapter.
Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna log, the planet, in the spiritual sky, and be intimately connected with the Supreme Personality Krishna, must take this formula as stated by the Supreme himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book directed to the conditioned souls who are engaged in the material world with the purpose of lording it over nature, who do not know of the real spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand his spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Spiritual Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to God. Now, here is the verse which clearly explains the process by which one can attain success in his spiritual activity, devotional service. As far as work is concerned, one should transfer this energy entirely to Krishna conscious activities, as stated in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anasaktasya Vishayan, Yatharthamukrinjataha, Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, Yuktam Vairagyam Uchyate. No work should be done by any man except in relationship to Krishna. This is called Krishna Karma. One may be engaged in various activities, but one should not be attached to the result of his work. The result should be done only for him. For example, one may be engaged in business, but to transform that activity into Krishna consciousness, one has to do business for Krishna. If Krishna is a proprietor of the business, then Krishna should enjoy the profit of the business. If a businessman is in possession of thousands and thousands of dollars, and if he has to offer all this to Krishna, he can do it. This is work for Krishna. Instead of constructing a big building for his sense gratification, he can construct a nice temple for Krishna, and he can install the deity of Krishna and arrange for the deity service. as is outlined in the authorized books of devotion service. This is all Krishna karma. One should not be attached to the result of his work. Result of his work means money, but the result should be offered to Krishna. And one should accept as prasadam the remnants of offerings to Krishna. If one constructs a very big building for Krishna and installs the deity of Krishna, one is not prohibited from living there. But it is understood that the proprietor of the building is Krishna. That is called Krishna consciousness. If, however, one is not able to construct a temple for Krishna, one can engage himself in cleansing the temple of Krishna. That is also Krishna karma. One can cultivate a garden. Anyone who has land, in India at least any poor man has a certain amount of land, can utilize that for Krishna by growing flowers to offer him. One can sow tulasi plants because tulasi leaves are very important, and Krishna has recommended this in Bhagavad Gita. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. Krishna desires that one offer him either a leaf or a flower or fruit or a little water, and by such an offering he is satisfied. This leaf especially refers to the tulasi. So one can sow tulasi and pour water on the plant. Thus, even the poorest man can engage in the service of Krishna. These are some of the examples of how one can engage in working for Krishna. In other words, this is talking of real activity, physical activity. One can engage in physical activities of service to Krishna, like engaging in some business or constructing a temple and so on, or setting up a tulasi garden and so on. The word Mat Paramaha refers to one who considers the association of Krishna in a supreme abode to be the highest perfection of life. Such a person does not wish to be elevated to the higher planets, such as the moon or sun or heavenly planets, or even the highest planet of this universe, Brahmaloka. He has no attraction for that. He is only attracted to being transferred to the spiritual sky. And even in the spiritual sky, he is not satisfied with merging into the glowing Brahmajyoti effulgence, or he wants to enter the highest spiritual planet, namely Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan. He has full knowledge of that planet. Therefore, he is not interested in any other. Okay? Not this one. He wants to enter the highest spiritual planet, namely Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan. As indicated by the word Madbhaktaha, he fully engages in devotional service, specifically in the 9 processes of devotional engagement: hearing, chanting, remembering, working, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering prayers, carrying out the orders of the Lord, making friends with him, and surrendering everything to him. One can engage in all 9 devotion processes, or 8 or 7, or at least in one, and that will surely make one perfect. The term Sangha Varjitaha is very significant. One should disassociate himself from persons who are against Krishna. Not only are the atheistic persons against Krishna, but so also are those who are attracted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. Therefore, the pure form of devotional service is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as follows: Anyabhilashita shunyam jnanakarma dhyanavritamanukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttama. In this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami clearly states that if anyone wants to execute unalloyed devotional service, he must be freed from all kinds of material contamination. He must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. When freed from such unwanted association and from the contamination of material desires, one favorably cultivates knowledge of Krishna. That is called pure devotional service. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. One should think of Krishna and act for Krishna favorably, not unfavorably. Kamsa was an enemy of Krishna. From the very beginning of Krishna's birth, Kamsa planned in so many ways to kill him. And because he was always unsuccessful, he was always thinking of Krishna. Just while working, while eating, while sleeping, he was always Krishna conscious in every respect. But that Krishna consciousness was not favorable. Therefore, in spite of his always thinking of Krishna 24 hours a day, he was considered a demon. Krishna at last killed him. Of course, anyone who is killed by Krishna attains salvation immediately. But that is not the aim of the pure devotee. The pure devotee does not even want salvation. He does not want to be transferred even to the highest planet, Goloka Vrindavan. So did you note that? It's on the previous page. So how can someone explain how both of these is correct? By any person cannot attain Goloka Vrindavan. Why does Prabhupada say, on one hand, He wants to enter Goloka, and that's why he doesn't want to go to Goloka. How can the same pure devotee want to go to Goloka and want not to go to Goloka? What does it mean?
His meaning, last meaning is Mama Jagannath.
So that is so he does not want to go. But previous page Prabhupada says he wants to go.
If I don't want to go, then we go to Goloka.
You want to be always in assist,
He wants to serve.
So
If Krishna were to give him a facility, then naturally he will want to go. And another reason is he does not want to go to Goloka for Salokya, Sarki, Samipya, Saropya, and these opulences which are naturally found in the spiritual world. We don't want to go to Goloka just to eat peace or food. But to Goloka to please. However, not for any other reason. Yes. And if Krishna, gives him some services in some other place, such devotees will happily accept it. We want to please Krishna. His only objective is to serve Krishna wherever he may be. A devotee of Krishna is friendly to everyone. Therefore, it is said here that he has no enemy, nirvaira. He has no enemy means he does not consider anyone his enemy. Others may be considering him his enemy. May be considering him their enemy. How is this? A devotee situated in Krishna consciousness knows that only devotion service to Krishna can relieve a person from all the problems of life. He has personal experience of this. Therefore, he wants to introduce this system, Krishna consciousness, into human society. There are many examples in history of devotees of the Lord who risk their lives for the spreading of God consciousness. The favorite example is Lord Jesus Christ. He was crucified by the non-devotees, but he sacrificed his life for spreading God consciousness. Of course, it would be superficial to understand that he was killed. Similarly, in India also, there are many examples, such as Thakur Haridas and Prahlad Maharaj. Why such risk? Because they wanted to spread Krishna consciousness, and it is difficult. Firstly, this should be very clearly understood. Preaching is a very difficult activity. In one place, Prabhupada is disgusting. Also, because you have to meet so many opposition. You cannot be friendly with everyone. It is a difficult activity. It is a difficult activity. The Krishna conscious person knows that if a man is suffering, it is due to his forgetfulness of the secret relationship with Krishna. Therefore, the highest benefit one can render to human society is relieving one's neighbor from all material problems. In such a way, a pure devotee is engaged in the service of the Lord. Now, we can imagine how merciful Krishna is to those engaged in his service, risking everything for him. Therefore, it is certain that such persons must reach the supreme planet after leaving the body. So this is the reason why Krishna is saying that they attain his abode. There's a reason for that. Not that they're just doing something and Krishna wants to take them to him. It's because not only he is Matkarmakrit, Matparmaha, Matbhaktaha, and Sanghavivarditaha. He is also Nirvaira Sarvabhuteshu. He is not inimical towards any living entity. He wants to actively help them. He wants them also to experience the same happiness that he is experiencing. Therefore, Krishna is saying, Yastamameti Pandava. A person who is like this, he comes to. Therefore, it is certain that such persons must reach the supreme planet after leaving the body. In summary, the universal form of Krishna, which is a temporary manifestation, and the form of time which devours everything, and even the form of Krishna, four-handed, have all been exhibited by Krishna. Thus, Krishna is the origin of all these manifestations. It is not that Krishna is a manifestation of the original Vishwarupa or Vishnu. Krishna is the origin of all forms. There are hundreds and thousands of Vishnus. But for a devotee, no form of Krishna is important, but the original form, two-handed Shyamasundar. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that those who are attached to the Shyamasundar form of Krishna in love and devotion can see him always within the heart and cannot see anything else. One should understand, therefore, that the purport of this 11th chapter is that the form of Krishna is essential and supreme. Chapter 12, text 1.
Evam.
Please.
Arjuna Vacha Evam Satutita Ye Bhaktastam Pariyupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Yesham Ye Yoga Vittama. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested?
Here I should take up Krishna Chaturthi Thakur because as you will see, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Prabhupada, both of them are taking points from Krishna Chaturthi Thakur here right now. In the 12th chapter, the superiority of all types of devotees to the jnani, to the impersonalist jnani, to the sattvic jnanis, or the impersonalist jnanis. When Krishna Chaturthi uses the word jnani, he's talking of those who want to attain impersonal Brahman realization. This is described. And among the devotees, those who are endowed with wonderful qualities like lack of hatred are praised. Arjuna heard the great superiority of bhakti at the beginning of the topic of bhakti in the following words. The middle 6 chapters deal with direct devotional service. Just before that was the last verse of 6th chapter. That was just at the beginning of the discussion about bhakti. In the following words, Yogina api sarveja Madhatena antaratma Sadhavan bhajate yoma Sanayukat tamo mataha. But I consider him who worships me with faith, with mind attached to me, to be greater than all types of yogis. Arjuna, desiring to hear about the superiority of bhakti, even if it is in summary, asks a question. The devotee is described as being constantly engaged, worship you as Shyam Sundar, mentioned at the end of the last chapter with Matkarmakrit Matparamaha. Others worship the Brahman with no qualities, described in the Shrutis with statements such as Etad Vaitad Daksharam Gargi Brahmana Vivadanti Astulam Ananu Akraswam Ugargi, that Shara, that imperishable entity, which is not wide, not small, and not short, is called Brahman. Among these 2 types of persons who know yoga, who are the best knowers of yoga, Yogavid Tamaha, who know the best process for attaining you, or do they not know the process for attaining you? In a comparison involving 2 items, usually the form Yoga Vittara. Which of the 2 types know yoga better would be you? The word Yoga Vittama should be understood to suggest that among the better of the 2 types of knowers of yoga, who are the best knowers of yoga? See, there is positive, comparative, and superlative. The knower of yoga, the better knower of yoga, and the best knower of yoga. The yoga with Tama indicates that Arjuna wants to know who knows yoga best, who has a best understanding of spirituality. Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan. In the 12th chapter, the Lord says that among all processes, pure bhakti, having the greatest power, enables one to quickly attain the Lord. In the 2nd and consequent chapters, one particular part was described, in which after one understands and realizes the Jivatma, one then meditates on the Lord, who is the complete whole. This is illustrated in verses like Avinashi to Kadviti. A second part was shown in the 7th and subsequent chapter, in which, after understanding that the Jiva is an Amsha of the Lord, one meditates upon the source of that Amsha, the Supreme Lord, by the process of bhakti, with hearing and other devotional activity. Verses such as Maya Saktamanah Partha illustrate this. In other words, one pathway where you realize the soul, another pathway you realize the Supreme Lord. In those middle 6 chapters, bhakti mixed with yoga, yoga mishra bhakti, was also described in such verses as Prayana Kale, Jnana mixed with the process of bhakti. Jnana Mishra Bhakti was described in such words as Jnana Yajnana Chapyanye. At the end of the sixth chapter, before the middle six chapters, with the verse Yogina Api Sarvesham, the pure bhakti of those exclusively attached to the Lord, who were also the best among all, was described. Arjuna now asks a question. There are those desiring the Supreme Soul, who being constantly absorbed in you by the processes thus described in 7th chapter, Maya Saktamana Partha, worship you, Shyam Sundar, Krishna, with everything, with body, senses, and mind. There are also those desiring the Paramatma, who first worship, who meditate on the Jivatma's nature, which is Akshara, indestructible. That Jivatma is invisible to the material senses, and they endeavor to realize the Jivatma as Akshara by Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. In other words, there is one pathway which is discussed in the 6th chapter. It takes you through this, what I just pointed out, through detachment and realization. And until one day they get self-realized, they don't progress further to the next step. And there's another pathway. These two are Ekanta Bhakti, Anekanta. Within this is Paramaekanta. There's another pathway where you directly try to realize the Supreme Lord. You don't wait for self-realization, and after self-realization, you start spending all of your time in devotion service. You directly come to that point from day one. Of these two types of people, which persons have the quickest process for reaching the goal? Yoga with Taman. This is all Ramanujacharya, as the test is which is faster. The meaning is this. One process is to attain the Lord by first realizing the soul and then by meditating on the Lord. Since the Jivatma is bound, by realizing the Atma, one becomes free of obstacles and then one can attain the Lord. But because of the difficulty in meditating on the Jivatma, which is very small, Jivatma is also formless. So, can the goal really be accomplished by meditating on the Jivatma? The other process is the exclusive bhakti. Bhakti will quickly destroy all obstacles and quickly yield realization of the Lord. The practitioners become completely absorbed in bhakti. Of all the processes followed by these two types of persons, which is the best process? Now you tell me this. You know, somebody should read this out.
Arjuna said, "O Krishna, in all that you have taught me, I have understood that there are two types of yogi. One type of yogi binding all physical and social activities to the chains of dependence on exclusive bhakti worships you with pure bhakti. The other type of yogi, after accepting as necessary all physical and social activities by Niskam Karma Yoga, takes support of your Adhyatmika Yoga, having unmanifest and indestructible Swarupa, which is the better of these two types of yoga."
Okay, someone should read out the first purpose.
Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that the different processes of realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti Yoga, devotional service is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth. But Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body, he is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the supreme whole and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body at once is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad Gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the absolute truth, which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now, Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonal manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the absolute truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could thus understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question asked of Krishna by Arjuna will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and the personal conceptions of the absolute truth.
Why is impersonalism even there? If ultimately Krishna is a person, why is impersonalism even there?
So that if opposition is there, one will get the opposite side will be more attracted. If something is there in opposition, and I know this thing is correct, I'll be more attached to that, more firm in that, because I'll try to prove that what they are saying is wrong.
Okay, so how does that explain why impersonalism is there?
If something is impersonalism is not there, only personalism is there, then that much attachment, it is there, but that much attachment may not come.
What is there then? For whom is this process given?
Why in duality, why in doubt?
And what is the ultimate goal of this process? To go on increasing their doubts.
Ultimate goal of
The process of impersonalism.
It is actually process given for those who are not interested in the about. They have some ideas. They want to do bhakti, but somehow, somebody wants to eat only sweet, don't have to eat all other items. So slowly by coming to this process, gradually they are limited.
So what is the idea? First you give them the sweet and then finally you give them the whole thali.
Slowly when they find
Something is better than nothing.
Gradually when they get it, there is something more I don't know, then you will be put the
So it is accepted as a means, not as a goal.
not as a goal.
Not as the goal. Still not Thakur brings it up. The book called Annaya Sutra. No sutra available. Origin. Origin. What is the origin? It was not original and original. Somehow we discovered with great difficulty. Published by Sri Radhika Prasad Datta. 181 number, Manistala Street, Calcutta. Sri Godruma Chandraya Namaha. 409. Dorada 409. You can do your calculation when it was. Amnayas, Srimad Amnaya Sutram. It is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's own great summary of Vedic teachings, 130 sutras. Okay. At some point we should, these are all very interesting. For every sutra, it gives evidence from Shruti, evidence from Smriti, and evidence from one Acharya. All book. Very interesting. So in one place, he takes up this. Okay. He brings up Abhideya. Nitya karma hyeva abhideyam ityeke. Some people think that the process that should be adopted is we should accept the routine pathway of fruitive activity. Chinmatra advaita jnanam abhideyam nityapare. Then others say that meditation on the one non-dual consciousness, that should be accepted as a process. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives the conclusion. Yatra dharmaya karma, viragaya dharma, chid rasaya viragas, tatra gauna rupena karmaiva abhideyam. When one accepts karma in order to attain dharma, 5 credits, and one accepts 5 credits in order to attain renunciation and detachment, vairagya, and one attains that in order to attain Chid rasa, spiritual mellow, prema bhakti rasa. When one accepts renunciation for that purpose, then that performance of one's material duties, that can be accepted secondarily, gauna rupena. Yatra chid rasaya jnanam, tatra gauna rupena jnanam abhideyam. And when one accepts that process of that meditation on Brahman and all that, and that can lead you towards prema bhakti rasa, then secondarily that is accepted as a process. In other words, there's like we see in fact one. Through meditation, you realize that you are qualitatively one with other living entities, and then you realize you are qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then you realize that you are actually quantitatively a servant of the Supreme Lord. Then you increase your devotion service. So there is a place for it. It is a means. It is a means. Optional means. It is not compulsory. Everybody does not need to go through that. Chid Vishesha Spurti Sadhanam Abhideyam iti Bhagyavanta. Those who are fortunate, they understand that that process by which one can perceive spiritual variety as the Abhideya, as the process, these people are very fortunate. Bhagavatam Satprasangad Ananya Bhakto Shraddha. And such fortunate people, when they attain Satprasanga, Sadhu Sangha, then they attain faith in Ananya Bhakti. They attain faith in exclusive devotional service. And then one day they progress. Yeah. Then they engage in 9 types of devotional service. Bhajan, Nishtha, Sakti, Bhava, Prema. Then what is the goal? Avidya kalpita jada visheshaha na prayojanam. The material variegatedness that has been created, manufactured by avidya, maya, that is not the goal. Napi nirvisheshaha. And the non-variegated spiritual state of existence, that is also not the goal. Paramarthe tasya na prayojanatvam into kvachit avideyatvam. It is not the goal of spiritual life, impersonalism. Into kvachit avideyatvam. But sometimes it is accepted as a means, secondary means. But that also sometimes. Tattu sarvatra na prashastam. That also is not accepted everywhere. Everywhere it is not glorified, that pathway. Like here in Bhagavad Gita, we'll see. Krishna have simply criticized. Even though it is theoretically an acceptable secondary pathway, Krishna will not talk about it in a very favorable manner. Krishna himself condemns it. And in Bhagavatam, so many places we'll hear condemnation of the impersonal process, their desires, everything about them is condemned. So that is for that reason. Okay, let's move on. Text number 2.
He Bhagwan Uvacha Mai Yavayashya Manoyema Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Teme Yukta Tamamatam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect.
Among them, my devotees are the best. Those who absorb their minds in me, Shamsundar, those who desire to be constantly united with me, with faith which is beyond the gunas. They, my Ananya Bhakta, are the best knowers of yoga. Concerning faith, it is said, Tatvikya Dhyatmiki Shraddha Karma Shraddha to Rajasi. Tamasya Dharmeya Shraddha Matsevayam to Nirguna. Faith directed towards spiritual life is in the mode of goodness. Faith rooted in fruitive work is in the mode of passion. Faith residing in irreligious activities is in the mode of ignorance. But faith in my devotion service is purely transparent. Krishna speaking to Uddhava. From this, it should be inferred that inferior to these Ananya Bhaktas are those having bhakti mixed with jnana, karma, or other processes, which are called yoga vittara. Thus, it is shown here that bhakti is better than jnana, and that among the types of bhakti, Ananya Bhakti is the best. With Baladev Vidyabhushan, the Lord being asked, answered, those devotees who worship me with firm faith, continuously absorbing their minds in me, Swayam Bhagavan, the son of Devaki, having the complexion of a blue lotus, as well as other qualities, who worship me by hearing another method, and who desire an eternal relationship with me, are considered by me to be the most qualified. They have the method for most quickly attaining me. Bhaktivinoda.
The Lord said, the devotee who with the assistance of Nirguna faith makes his whole life full of bhakti and absorbs his mind in me is best of all yogis.
Complete ginger. Medicine. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly said that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. It is not a very difficult thing. Look at the words. Previous yoga with Tama. Last word of text 1. The most perfect in knowledge of yoga. Yoga is yoga with means knower. Yogavid means knower of yoga. Tamaha indicates most perfect. So he is the greatest knower of yoga. Okay. And look at the current verse. Second line. Shraddhaya parayopeta teme yukta tamamata. Yukta tama is the same as the yoga with tama. Yukta tama, most perfect in yoga. Straight question, straight answer. Arjuna is asking now, whatever it may be, even the impersonalists, even Shankaracharya's followers, they accept that this verse actually means the question is, they accept the question the way we have translated. No, that is exactly how they also translate. No, that's one little difference. They don't say most perfect in knowledge of yoga. They translate this to mean who they accept the most perfect in knowledge of yoga, but they twist it to mean which is the easiest pathway. But Arjuna is not asking exactly like that. He's asking which is the most complete realization. And Krishna's answer is also very clear. He is Yukta Tama, most perfect in yoga. Even though Baladev Vidyabhushan also accepts, the question of speed comes, which is slow, which is fast. But still, even Baladev Vidyabhushan accepts that the impersonal realization, or for instance, he says the Brahman that is being discussed here is the Jiva Brahman. The word Brahman can refer to Ishvara. The word Brahman can refer to Jiva. The word Brahman can refer to Prakriti also. You will see all these instances. So even if you say this is a question about whether to worship Ishvara and Jiva Brahman, even if you were to go with that, then realization of Jiva Brahman is definitely inferior to realization of Ishvara, even according to Baladev Vidyabhushan. So from all different perspectives, Yukta Tama is really the only appropriate meaning will be more perfect in yoga. Okay. Straightforward question, straightforward answer. Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. Text 3 to 4.
एकवक्षरम् अनिर्दिश्यम् अव्यक्तं पर्युपासते सर्वत्रगमनं नित्यं च कुटस्थं अचलं ध्रुवं संयमेन्द्रिय ग्रामं सर्वत्र समबुद्धयः ते प्राप्नुवन्ति माम् एव सर्वभूतहिते रताः. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by concluding the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons, engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me.
Those who worship my impersonal feature known as Brahman are inferior because of their state of suffering. This the Lord states in 2 verses. Those who worship the impersonal Brahman, which is not possible to designate because it is without form or other qualities, which is spread everywhere, which is beyond logic and extending over time, over all time, devoid of increase or other change and eternal, attainment in the form of the impersonal Brahman. The Lord says that they attain me because the impersonal Brahman is not different from him. There is no Brahman separate from, there is no impersonal Brahman separate from the Supreme Lord. It is simply an incomplete perception of the Supreme Lord. So there is, in fact, it's not that there is an impersonal Brahman separate and the Supreme Lord is separate and all that. When you see him vaguely, then you refer to him as the impersonal Brahman. It's just like there is no sun, there's no sun, how do I say, sunshine different from sun. You cannot separate the sunshine from sun now. Sunshine is always with us. So the impersonal Brahman is just a manifestation. It's a vague, it's only what is vaguely realized, that's all. Okay, Baladev Vidyabhushan. Baladev Vidyabhushan, of course, translates this as the distinction between those who are meditating on Ishvara versus those who are meditating on Jiva Brahman. Those who do not worship me and instead attempt realization of their Atma will also attain me after a long time and after great suffering. So, between this and this, which is part, so track 3 is fast. Track 1 is slow. And they go through great difficulty. They're inferior to the devotees just mentioned. They're inferior to the devotees mentioned in the previous verse. This is explained in 3 verses. Those who first only meditate on their own Atma undergo a great deal of suffering. The ideas presented in verse 3 are connected with the conclusion in verse 5. The Atma, the Jivatma, is described. It is impossible to define by the words related to devas or men who have bodily designations because it is different from the body. It is beyond the range of the senses. It pervades the body, senses, and pranas. It is not subject to logical analysis, and thus it is known only through Shruti. Only by Shruti is the Jivatma acknowledged as both knowledge itself and the knower of itself and other objects. It is at all times limited to enjoying a small form. It is without movement because of being knowledge itself and because of also being the knower. It is eternally fixed in being sheltered by the Supreme Soul. The process of meditation of this Jivatma is then described. They completely control all of the senses, withdrawing them from the sense objects, seeing the friend, the well-wisher, the enemy, and the neutral person equally. Another meaning is that since they see Brahman situated in all living and non-living entities, everything being the abode of Brahman, they do not have any enmity towards anything. They endeavor for the auspiciousness of all beings. After realization of their own Atma, they finally engage in devotion to me in the form of offering their actions to me. These persons also attain me, realizing a form predominated by extreme majesty. There is no doubt about it. So they attain the Vaikuntha form of the Lord. That is their goal. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, somebody should read.
But those who are filled up in this river, indescribable, unmanifest, all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, unmoving, fixed and impersonal Swarup, by regulating their senses, looking on all things equally, being intent on the welfare of all beings, also attain me in a form predominated by powers after much difficulty. There is no object to be worshipped except me. Thus, by whatever means one strives for the highest entity, the person attains me.
Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Lord, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Shri Krishna. So whether it is you want to attain Jivatma realization, and then you want to come to that point, or you want to go through the personal Brahman realization and then come to that point, or you want to directly worship Krishna himself and directly come to that point. The final goal is the same. There's only one goal. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When a man comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. Even Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary to that verse, that 7th chapter verse, Bhavanam Jarmanamante Gyanavan Nam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvaviti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. There also. What is that verse number? 7.19. Bahunam Janmanamante Karanam. 19, correct. See, even in his commentary. And his Jnani is the Sattvic Jnani. You say that this Sattvic Jnani is fixed in you as supreme goal, consequently, this Jnani Bhakta attains you. But how long does it take a Sattvic Jnani to become qualified as a devotee? He who possesses knowledge, seeing Vasudeva everywhere, after many births surrenders to me. So it takes many, many births. Finally, he comes to this point, but it takes many births. Such a saintly person surrenders to me through chance association with devotees. If by chance the devotees want to go and preach to him and make him pure, then that Jnani Bhakta has a very steady mind and it's very rare. As I've said, Manusyanam Sahasresha, out of thousands, one person may know me in truth. What to speak of the rarity then of the Kevala or Ekanta Bhakta? Such a person is even rarer. So they all get the chance to attain Krishna, Bhagavan realization, but long time and with great difficulty. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto him. In order to perceive the super soul within the individual soul, one has to see the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. So this is Paramatma realization. So, you go through Brahman realization, after which you go and attain Paramatma realization, then you attain Bhagavan realization. But there's a lot of time gap in between these. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. Meaning, this method of coming to the point of pure Krishna consciousness through impersonal realization is very difficult. Mostly they fall away. In previous yugas, at least they could successfully come to that point. But in Kali Yuga, they get distracted, they will fall away. Originally speaking, everywhere, like we already saw, Bhakti Mishra Karma. You can engage in, you can then go to Karma Mishra Bhakti and then Bhakti. Ultimately, goal is Bhakti only. Or Bhakti Mishra Karma, so Bhakti Mishra Jnana, and then Jnana Mishra Bhakti and Bhakti. But then between these takes a lot of time. Similarly, Bhakti Mishra Karma, Bhakti Mishra Jnana, Bhakti Mishra Yoga, Yoga Mishra Bhakti, and then Bhakti. But it takes long. No, we just put it into a simple little chart and we think, wow, it's a simple thing. But it takes so many lifetimes. It takes so many lifetimes. If it is not up to the mark, it will take so many lifetimes. Text 5.
Avyakta Satyatesam Avyakta hi gatir dukkham Dehavadhir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested impersonal feature of the Supreme, enhancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied.
This verse describes the This verse describes a little of their inferior positions. Those who are attracted to only impersonal Brahman, who desire only realization of impersonal Brahman, undergo excessive difficulties in attaining it. Because by what means at all can something without qualities be made manifest? That goal is attained by the jivas endowed with bodies only by undergoing suffering. Senses have the power for particular knowledge, such as sound, not for something which does not possess particular quality. Therefore, stopping all the senses is necessary for those who desire knowledge of the impersonal without particular qualities, nirvishesha. But stopping the senses is like stopping the rivers. Stopping the senses is difficult. Sanat Kumara says, Yatpada Pankaj Palasha Vilasa Bhaktya Karmasha Yon Rapita Putra Sayanti Santa Tadvan Navita Matayo Yatayo Pirudas Photo Ganastama Anam Vasudeva. The devotees were always engaged in the service of the toes on the lotus feet of Parama and very easily overcome hard-knotted desires for fruitive activities. Because this is very difficult. The non-devotees, the jnanis and yogis, although trying to stop the waves of self-gratification, cannot do so. Therefore, you are advised to engage in the devotional service of Krishna, the son of Vasudeva. Kritro Mahani Kulvarna Moklavesha Shadvarganakrama Sutena Dipir Shanti Tattvam Harer Bhagavato Granina Vandham Kritpurvam Vyasanamuttara Dustararnam. The ocean of lessons is very difficult to cross because it is infested with many dangerous sharks. Although those who are non-devotees undergo severe austerities and penances to cross the ocean, we recommend that you simply take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are like boats for crossing the ocean. Although the ocean is difficult to cross, by taking shelter of his lotus feet, you will overcome all danger. Furthermore, even that goal of impersonal Brahman, which is attained by such suffering, is attained only by having a mixture with bhakti. Without bhakti to the Lord, the worshippers of the impersonal Brahman obtain only suffering and not impersonal Brahman. Brahma says, Tesham aso kleshala eva shishyate namyadya faspula ushava ghati nam. Like a person who beats an empty husk of wheat cannot get grain, one who simply speculates cannot achieve self-realization. Its only gain is trouble. That's all he gets. He goes nowhere actually. Baladev Vidyabhushan. If worshippers if the meditators of Jivatma also attain you, why do you say that the devotees are superior? Those whose minds are engaged in intense meditation on the Jivatma, which is very subtle in form, endure greater difficulties, even though the former category of person. In other words, whenever we hear this kind of self-realization, how do I describe? It is not the self-realization that we normally talk about. The normal self-realization that we talk about is Swarup Siddhi, where you realize your relationship with Krishna and everything. This is not that. This is only realizing that the Jivatma is not the body. That's all. He does not recognize his spiritual identity, personal identity, or that. He only recognizes he is not the body. So maybe we can call it as impersonal Jivatma realization. I don't know what to call it. But then the Jivatma is not impersonal as such. So you are only allowed to understand that you are not the body. Only that much. That much only you are allowed to see. Even though the former category of persons, devotees, Manishta devotees, the Ekanta devotees, Ekanta means Paranishita and Nirvana, also endure difficulty in withdrawing the senses from objects other than me and engaging various angas of bhakti. They do not experience the same suffering because of the dazzling attraction of glimpses to form. In other words, there is some relationship with service to the form of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada will come to this point. You'll see that. There is some relationship with the personality, Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastime. And that attracts. Whereas for the other one, they have to themselves come to the point of realizing that they are not the body and so on. And then they have to realize that they are qualitatively one with God and then qualitatively different from God. It's a whole process. How has this great suffering, which is difficult to remove, arisen? The mind's concentration on the invisible Atma becomes difficult for those who think they are their body. The living entities residing in bodies have been thinking they are their bodies for a long period of time. How can they suddenly cultivate thoughts of being a small conscious particle? The concept which they have until now completely rejected. Okay, then Baladev Vidyabhushan summarizes Shankaracharya's interpretation of these 5 verses. which he also talks about impersonal Brahman and personal Brahman. But his impersonal Brahman is spiritual, and his personal Brahman is material. That is his conception of the form of the Lord. In fact, their traditional explanation is if you worship the material Brahman, it's called Saguna Brahman. You worship the material Brahman, then you become qualified to worship the spiritual Brahman. Now, how can something material give you spiritual realization? For that, they have an example. Let us say you are sleeping and you are dreaming. You are in a forest. You are walking. Suddenly you see a tiger. The tiger sees you. The tiger starts coming towards you. You start running away. And the tiger is chasing. You are running. And then the tiger is just about to pounce on you. You break out of the tree. Okay. No tiger, no forest, no running. How did you get out of the tree? You got out of it because of a tiger. A tiger which does not actually exist. So, all this worshipping Krishna is a tiger inside the tree. That is all they understand. Because outside the tree, there is no variety. But then what about that variety? Still you should distinguish between that tiger and something else. Because the tiger was a helpful tiger. It helped. It brought you to reality. So Krishna is that kind of helpful tiger. So you begin to, it helps you. So basically that is that concept they have. So between impersonal meditation and personal meditation, Arjuna is here asking, which is easier. The Shankaracharya translates that equation. And then Lord Krishna is saying, definitely the impersonal pathway is very difficult. The personal pathway is very easy. But then eventually they also come to the highest point, impersonal realization. And for that they have this example. Tiger inside the tree. Prabhupada gives a counter example. You are inside a tree. You are inside a forest. And there's a tiger. The tiger is chasing. But before the tiger gets to you and all that, you suddenly hear a loud sound. That's the alarm clock. Alarm, the sound of the alarm. That woke you up. That got you out of the dream. But the alarm clock is not inside the dream. It's outside the dream. So from outside the dream, you have been dragged outside. You've been taken, that sound entered into the dream and took you. So Prabhupada explained, Goloke Premadhan Harinam Sankirtan is coming from the spiritual world, from the spiritual platform, even though we are inside mind. So we are both accept that it's something like a dream only. But the source of deliverance, that is not coming from inside, that is coming from outside. Okay. So I'm not going to right now here get into all these details. So Baladev Vidyabhushan, he refutes it. By saying this idea is foolish because the Vedanta Sutras reject the idea of a Brahman having two forms with the word Gati Samanya. There's only one conception of Brahman that is taught. This one Brahman is to be known by the Vedas. Yayata Daksharam Adhigamyate, the indestructible, the Akshara is attained by that knowledge, Vedic knowledge. So it is not Anirdeshyam or indescribable by the Vedas. The impersonalists think that the supreme absolute truth cannot be described directly by the Vedas, but it can be described. These other ones, I do think that at each level we should continue with our study of Bhagavad Gita. Right now, the exams are only dealing with Prabhupada. But I think that next level we should have Bhakti Vinod. Third level we should have Baladev Vidyabhushan. Fourth level we should have Vishwanath. Prabhupada also wanted books to be studied at all the higher levels. In ISKCON, we generally don't do that. When we come to Bhakti, we totally forget all the Bhakti Shastra books. We must continue through further explanation. It's a little bit more complicated than there are so many other side subjects which you can only understand when other books are introduced and all that. That's why I'm thinking level 1, just keep the Bodhini or something like that, and just focus on Prabhupada's first words. And then next level, gradually we can. Bhakti Vinod, I want someone to read out Bhakti Vinod.
The difference between the Jnana Yogi and Bhakti Yogi is that the Bhakti Yogi, after cultivating the supreme entity, easily at the time of practice attains the supreme entity at the time of result without fear. The Jnana Yogi fixed always on the unmanifest tattva, experiences difficulty in contemplating the opposite of matter at the time of practice. Contemplating the opposite of normal perception produces distress for the jiva. At the time of results, there is no fearlessness, as he cannot recognize my eternal Swarup before surpassing sadhana. Even his final goal produces distress. The jiva is an eternal conscious entity. If he merges into an unmanifest state, his designated state is destroyed. If his real Swarup manifests, then while giving up the opposite of his Swarup, identification with the Lord, there is difficulty. The jiva who starts meditation on the unmanifest, because of having a body, attains result in the form of distress during sadhana and on attaining the goal. Actually, the jiva has a conscious Swarup and is characterized by a spiritual body. One should know that the unmanifest state is contrary to the jiva's Swarup and produces distress. Bhakti Yoga produces auspiciousness of the jiva. And Jnana becomes independent of Bhakti, it produces inauspiciousness everywhere. Thus the Adhyatma Yoga, accomplished after worshipping a formless, changeless, all-pervading impersonal Swarup, is not recommended.
The group of transcendentalists who follow the path of the insubduable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis. And persons who are in full Krishna consciousness engaged in devotional service to the Lord are called Bhakti Yogis. The Baladev Vidyabhushan also, in one of his writings, in his commentary to Laghu Bhagavatam, he also points out that what the impersonalists consider to be Brahman, that is not what we are considering to be impersonal Brahman. Our impersonal Brahman is real. It is not what Shankaracharya's followers are talking about. We should not confuse these two. Our impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of Krishna. Krishna is spiritual. Krishna's effulgence is spiritual. Okay. Whereas the impersonal Brahman that they are talking about, that is not this. They don't even know about the impersonal effulgence of the Great One. They are just having some imagination. So we should carefully distinguish between these two. Whenever you come across descriptions of impersonalists who have actually attained success. Success means Brahman realization, impersonal Brahman realization. Those who have got out of samsara chakra and who have attained Brahman realization, they all understand that Krishna is spiritual and the Brahma Jyoti is also spiritual. They do not think that Krishna is Maya. There are several different ways by which impersonalists try to think that Krishna is Maya, this world is Maya, the Jivatma is Maya. So many different ways. tirelessly trying to manufacture some explanation for it. Constant. Constant. Now here, the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome. Whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the Bhakti Yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind which can thus be applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form within the temple is not idol worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be Saguna or Nirguna. See, these are all originally words found in Shastra, Saguna and Nirguna. Okay. There is something called Saguna Upasana, Nirguna Upasana. But the meaning is not what all these impersonalist Mayavadi people are invoking. That is not the meaning. The original meaning is this, of the Supreme possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is Saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material quality. This is what is called Saguna worship. But the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. We may find some mailboxes on the street. And if we post our letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But any old box or an imitation, which we may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Archa Vigraha. This Archa Vigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. The Lord is omnipotent, all powerful. Therefore, by his incarnation as Archa Vigraha, he can accept the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man and conditioned life. The Ramanujacharya followers, for them, within Navavida Bhakti, we have a central process, Kirtanam. Kirtanam is our center. For Ramanujacharya followers, the center is Archana. In fact, they are following Dwapara Yuga's Yuga. So even if they do other activities, the center will always be that for them. That is how they've been trained. So for them, if there's no facility for worshipping the deity, it is like almost death for them. Imagine if the government, don't want to imagine, but if we are not allowed to chant Hare Krishna, sing Hare Krishna, how difficult it will be. So it is like that, to tell them that they cannot worship the Supreme Lord in deity form. Okay. So they very many times they point out that worshipping the deity is a very, very nice way of involving our complete life, because all of our senses are utilized. In fact, when we see necro devotion, you'll see all the senses are utilized in deity service. All of the senses are utilized. Karmendriyas, Jnanendriyas, Antarendriyas, everything is utilized. If most of us, we are not so transcendental like Haridas Thakur or without deity. Imagine we have no deity. Actually, there was a time in ISKCON where there were no deity. Initially, Prabhupada introduced the morning program. ISKCON has always been through various phases. Initially, they were all very happy with Swamiji. And at one point, some devotees started to offer obeisances after Prabhupada started giving Diksha, offer obeisances on the floor. So some people thought that's too much, I'm not going to do that, and they left. Then after a couple of years, Prabhupada introduced morning program. And then some people said that's too much, and so they left. So at each point, and Prabhupada didn't want to increase standards. Then at one point, Prabhupada introduced Bhagavatam class and all. And some felt that's also too much. So you can see, deity worship is, these things are very, very important. Imagine Mayapur, small Mayapur without Radha Madhava. I really can't even understand what that will be. Where the queen and king of Mayapur. The vast majority of us, we require deity. Gopipuranand who told me that deity worship is not some inferior activity, only for those exalted persons who are so absorbed in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Paranam, Padasevanam. And only that. They are capable of that, that's fine, but vast majority you cannot even imagine that kind of or eating whatever you have to go on Madhukari and whatever they give you in your PG, you cannot complain. You fall sick, you cannot go to a doctor because it's all forbidden. Goswamis have given rules. You get sick, die, that's all. You cannot, that is that pathway. You are going into only Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Sevanam, or transcendental, not even worship deity. Deity worship is there even in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sadhana Bhakti, most of the items are all deity worship related only. Rupa Goswami does not have a problem with deity worship. He himself established a deity form. Radha Govinda Dev, and then Madan Mohan deity, Sanatana Goswami established. Our perfect acharyas, they also established deity. Even Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he had deity. So for a devotee, there's no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as Upanishad. And they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feelings, and realize all these processes. Upanishad, I already informed you about just that one little Panchagni Vidya of Chandogya Upanishad, which talks about going to the heavenly planet. And it talks in terms of fire and offering and this and that. That's how Upanishads communicate. We have to understand this. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness engaged in devotion service simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one ultimately has to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this surrendering process is called bhakti, but instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman and spends his whole life in that way, the result is simply troublesome. Therefore, it is advised here that one should not take up this troublesome path of self-realization because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. A living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal and knowledgeable aspects of his original nature, but the blissful portion is not realized. By the grace of some devotee, such a transcendentalist, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, may come to the point of Bhakti Yoga or devotion service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also becomes a source of trouble because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest. Unmanifest meaning the impersonal feature of Krishna, both at the time of practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of a spiritual blissful self. One should not take up this process. For every individual soul, for every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotion service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotion service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. If there was one example, like one person was there, the morning time they used to to deity worship. Because of that, only 2 rounds chanting is done. We're telling like 20 chanting 4 rounds or 6 rounds. But because of especially that the morning time he will do deity worship only, he can't leave it. He can't stop that deity worship. He don't want to stop. So in that case, what would be better for him? Like if
You should ask his spiritual master.
he is new, he doesn't have spiritual master. Like only 2 rounds, 4 rounds is sometimes his brain.
Then who's guiding him?
Some other person is guiding. If I had to suggest him what I would
First of all, you have to see what's on his altar.
our connected to Iskon, everything from our family. Gurnika.
Then that worship for time being can be minimized and you should chant in front of the deity. You should increase his chanting. And then his life will be regulated, routinized, and Krishna will give him more time. Then he can properly worship the deities. Properly.
Please understand one point. The report that we have number 2, the Prabhupada speaks about the pure devotee who is constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, etc. To which level he responds to?
Nirupeksh devotee.
Could it be Parinishta devotee?
Theoretically possible. Theoretically. See, the Parinishta is internally a Nirupeksh. Only externally he cannot be because he is very much bothered about these people who want to go indirectly, slowly, this, that. So a little bit of his time he goes into material learning. It's also just to attract them, make them understand the importance of that.
This is Nirapeksha.
No, Nirupeksh externally also does not carry out the duties.
Difficult to understand because Srila Prabhupada.
Okay, Nirupeksh devotee is like an ideal ISKCON devotee and is understood in 2022. And you don't have any sense of Varna, Ashtama, Sri, Dharma, nothing. That is actually a Nirupeksh. But that is not a Parinishta. Identity, material identity. Parinishta has material identity. Just like we have gender identity, I'm male. Whole life I'm male. Brahmana, whole life I'm Brahmana. Kshatriya, whole life I'm Kshatriya. Vaishya, whole life I'm Vaishya. Krishna conscious Kshatriya, that's maybe. I may be a Krishna conscious Kshatriya more spiritually advanced than somebody else who is Brahmana. Maybe. But I will never teach you. Why? Kshatriya cannot teach you. Parinishta will follow the suit. Because that activity of teaching Vedic literature belongs to Brahmana. So that Brahmana who may be less realized than me, I will make him sit. Because Kshatriya should serve Brahmana.
Where there is one ashram, it's difficult to talk about this Parinishta.
We should individually, we already have men, we already have women. So women can anyway start with them. They don't have to wait for it, to do something. The men can also already is more or less understood this one. God blessing on us. Please, that much we understand. Ashramas are fixed and clear. Only one of they should understand. Who joins a temple within 10 years or so, they understand that one. It is simply an identification of the subtle body, that's all. With my subtle, if I have a Vaishya subtle body, I should follow the rules pertaining to the Vaishya subtle body. That's not me. Just like gender is not me. I will not follow. So Varna goes whatever my subtle body. So the Parinishta will follow the rules. But will follow that even more seriously. But they are not bothered about the slowest track. Parinishta and then Nirupeksh. long as we agree to be as confused as the rest of us are, not be able to follow. Neither is permission. Not only. And the Nirupeksha is not a just. It's very, very important one. Neither the male Nirupeksha or female Nirupeksha, they're all renounced. Fully engaged in it. And they don't commit simple activity, they don't engage in it. Okay, let's move on. 6 and 7.
ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि संन्यस्तमत्परः अनन्यनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धता मृत्यु संसारसागरात् वानित्यचिरात् पार्थ मय्याभिषितचेतसाम्. For those who are giving up all their activities unto me and being devoted to me without engaged in devotional service and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Partha, for them I am the swift deliverer from ocean of birth and death.
Those who, after hearing all about the Jivatma and Paramatma, who perform exclusively the shelter of the Jivatma rather than through realization of Jivatma, quickly attain me just by that exclusive bhakti. This is explained in 2 verses. Those persons solely dedicated to me for the purpose of attaining me, giving up all prescribed activities, giving them up with the understanding that they are distractions from bhakti, taking me as the only goal, worship me, Krishna, by one method characterized by hearing and other devotional activities. While practicing this method, even while hearing and chanting, they absorb their minds in me. For these devotees whose minds are attracted to me, I am the deliverer from samsara, which brings about death, and which is difficult to cross like an ocean. Not a long time, but very quickly, since I am not able to bear delay in meeting them, I, putting them on the shoulders of Garuda, bring them to my dham. They attain my dham without going along the path of light and the waxing fortnight. Archiradi pathway. They don't go through that. According to my desire, unchecked, I bring them to my dham, putting them on the shoulders of Garuda without going via Archiradi pathway. Archiradi katim vina. Even though a person disregards prescribed activities, bhakti brings them to the exact goal. He who takes shelter of Narayana attains the goal of his practice without performing the duties of Artha, Dharma, Kama, and Moksha. Those who utter the name of Vishnu, giving up all dharmas, easily attain the goal, whereas those who follow all rules of dharma do not attain it. I quickly deliver from the ocean of deathly samsara those whose minds are absorbed in me, who worship and meditate upon my eternal form by exclusive bhakti yoga related to me, who take support of my teacher as Bhagavan, making all physical and social activities completely subservient to bhakti. That is, I free them from Maya's samsara in their own state. When the bondage of Maya is destroyed, I protect them from death in the form of the conception that they are one with Brahman. Can you read out the words, Purpose?
It is explicitly stated here that the devotees are very fortunate to be delivered very soon from material existence by Lord. In pure devotional service, one comes to the realization that God is great and that the individual soul is subordinate to him. His duty is to render service to the Lord, and if he does not, then he will render service to Maya. As stated before, the Supreme Lord can be appreciated only by devotional service. Therefore, one should be fully devoted. One should fix his mind fully on Krishna in order to achieve him. One should work only for Krishna. It does not matter in what kind of work one engages, but that work should be done only for Krishna. That is the standard of devotional service. The devotee does not desire any achievements other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna. He can sacrifice everything for Krishna's satisfaction, just as Arjuna did in the battle of Kurukshetra.
The process is very simple. One can devote himself in his occupation and engage at the same time in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay he will deliver a pure devotee, thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord Himself takes him. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. In the Vara Purana, this verse appears: Nayami Paramam Sthanam Archir Adi Gatim Vina Garuda Kandam Yethecham Anivritya. The purpose of this verse is that a devotee does not need to practice Ashtanga Yoga in order to transfer his soul to the spiritual planet. The responsibility is taken by Supreme Lord Himself. He clearly states here that He Himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by His great mercy, comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from the material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from this material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should always prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. In the Narayaniya, in this confirmed as follows: Yava sadhana sampatti purushartha chatushtaya Taya vina tat apnoti naro narayana ashraya. The purport of this verse is that one should not engage in the different process of fruitive activity or cultivate knowledge by the mental speculative process. One who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can attain all the benefits derived from other mystic processes, speculation, rituals, sacrifices, charities, etc. That is the specific benediction of devotional service. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. A devotee of the Lord can approach the supreme destination easily and happily, but this destination cannot be approached by any other process of religion. The conclusion of Bhagavad Gita is stated in the 18th chapter. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Raja Aham Tam Sarva Papyabhyo Mokshayami Ma Sucha. One should give up all other process of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There is no need for one to consider the sinful action of his past life because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not futilely try to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme Omnipotent God Krishna, Godhead Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life.
So you can notice here, Prabhupada is saying that one can have this occupation, but at the same time, we can engage in chanting Hare Krishna. So this is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's formula, right? From day one, let them take up the intermediate status. Why they have to first of all be neophyte, then become intermediate, then come to the topmost stage. Actually, in many places, not only about Swanishta Parishta, even when I talk about Kanishta Vaishnava, Madhyama Vaishnava, Uttama Vaishnava, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers, they can directly become Madhyama Vaishnava, Uttama Vaishnava. They just have to be determined, strict about it. Then they will be able to come to that point. So, if one executes devotional service properly, then it should be possible. But at any rate, it's all available. No need to delay. The more one wants to delay, the more risky it is. That is one message that keeps coming. Let's see, here Krishna himself is willing to help. So why don't you accept that? That is the basic idea. Whereas in the other pathway, you will have to help yourself. Whereas amongst the Ekanta Vaishnavas, track 2, track 3. Krishna enters into your life. Krishna takes care of your life. Takes care of your life. Some little bit from Bhaktivinoda that I'll read. Those who are attached to the unmanifest attain no help from thinking of non-different. It's not that they are thinking of impersonal Brahman and impersonal Brahman is thinking of him. Impersonal Brahman is impersonal, that's all. It is not going to help you. This helplessness is the cause of inauspiciousness. I promise that as people surrender to me, I respond to them. By this, it must be understood that the unmanifest feature of those who meditate on the unmanifest merges into me. What is the harm to me? How does I don't suffer because of that. But on attaining his goal, the jiva absorbed in non-difference remains far from the excellence of his own swarup, of devotional service. The Supreme Lord here promises that without delay he will deliver a pure devotee. Even if the Ramanuja Trikanal, they say that if you want, they also know these verses of Varaha, that the Lord comes and takes you himself, bypassing the Ativahikas, the demigods who take you. But this is only if you're engaged in Parabhakti. Parabhakti, exclusive engagement in Bhakti. Just nirvacha. But for them, it sounds very frightening because it's after detachment and realization you can come to that point of Parabhakti. Whereas we are told from day one, yeah, here, take this mopping thing and start mopping the temple. Day one, yeah, we are engaged in Krishna service. Extremely great fortune that we have. We had a question.
So this verse is 6, 7, and second verse. This is for nirapekshas.
This would apply for nirapekshas if you take them in a very literal sense. Because parinishtitas, when they go back to Godhead, they are taken through the demigod. So they take them. Parinishtitas, they attain Vaikuntha. Unless they become nirapeksha. They go to Vaikuntha, but they go through the same Archiradi pathway, the pathway of light. That's all. All of these subjects come and go in the worship. Very deeply discussing.
When nirapekshas.
Which one?
No, this purport which
I'll tell you how Ramanuja persons understand it. Very simple. Krishna himself takes charge. That means he himself will send those demigods and he himself will take me. He will send the first demigod, there are different demigods. We saw the list, there are 11. So he himself, the super soul of those demigods, he will impel those demigods. And through the demigod, he's going to take me to the next one. He himself will send Amanava from Vaikuntha. That's an Amanava Purush in particular. It's the last, not a demigod, it's the last associate. He himself will come, take me and bathe me in the Viraja. And I'm fully free from all my karma and whatnot. And he will take me to Vaikuntha and I will go to the queue and I will see. Whoa.
So from the viewpoint of Ramanuja,
But if you take it in a very literal sense, the Lord himself means literally himself, not even through demigods, not even through Amanava. He himself. And that will only apply to the Nirapeksha. Which they also accept. Only thing is they say Nirapeksha, long way. Later. First you become detached, realize afterwards.
There is a very prominent saint in Maharashtra, Sant Tukaram. The aeroplane has came for him. He is in that category, nirapekshas.
He did not even earn money, nothing. This child is dying, singing Tukaram, is glorifying. What names it? The world was always complete. All life was complete. That's what? Con ladies today really hate that kind of responsibility. Therefore, I keep on saying, why I'm saying? Because they have a very clear idea that there are two tracks in my life. In Nirapeksha, there is no two tracks, there's one track. One track. I need to make God happy. That's it. That's all. Second, you don't think like that. Two tracks. Two tracks. Material, spiritual. Material, spiritual. Material, spiritual. I have to satisfy Krishna with spiritual service. I have to satisfy Krishna with material service. It is not Maya. It is secondary service to God. 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 So in Varnashram Dharma, that idea is very, very strong. It's service to God. Varnashrama Charavata Purushena Parakuman Vishnura. Worship the Supreme Personality of God. It's not some mind. It's Gauna Bhakti. Even Bhaktivinoda Thakur repeatedly it is Gauna Bhakti. Because he noticed that everybody is trying to become Nirapeksha, unqualified, totally unqualified. Therefore, he is very, very heavy on it. It's better instead of being all this bogus, be a proper grihastha. Go through the process. Go through the process. Then, and of course, you are supposed to serve the genuine Nirapeksha devotee. Then you will develop that taste for it. When you develop a taste for it, automatically the eligibility for it will come, and then you will become a Nirapeksha at one point. But himself became a Nirapeksha at some point.
The middle 6 chapters are about Nirapekshas, but this chapter, 12th chapter, also there is a part about, or for Paranishkas. Middle 6 chapters about Gita is for Paranishkas, describing Paranishkas, but in this 12th chapter, there are at least
these verses. It's only a few verses. It's only a few verses that talk about Nirapeksha. Only a few verses in maybe 5 or 6 verses in maybe 6 chapters. Only that one. Doesn't at least clearly, very few verses that talk about Nirapeksha.
next verse also. We'll be talking about
8th verse, yes. Because everyone likes to hear that we don't have any material beauty. Tamasic people like it. Everyone likes it. So therefore, there's a lot of care, caution about it. Because anything that you don't like, you will immediately put a spiritual, for some spiritual reason, you want to leave it. Actually, we are just tamasic. Simply because of our tamogana, we don't want material beauty. Okay. Text number 8.
मया एव मन अदत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवाससि मया एव अथ ऊर्ध्वं न संशय. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt.
Since this is so, concentrate your mind upon me alone, not on your soul. In other words, be focused on realizing me. Don't be focused on realizing yourself as different from the body and so on. Offer your intellect to me. Doing this, you will live very close to me, Krishna. You are not like the Smanishta devotee who, after realizing the enjoyments of Swarga, attains me in a majestic form. Vaikuntha. Concentrating your mind on my eternal feature as Bhagavan, remember me, engage your intelligence which discriminates upon me, become situated in the truth of Bhagavan. By that you will attain unconditioned prema, the highest result of sadhana bhakti. That's what somebody should read.
One who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with Supreme Lord. So there is no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane. He lives in Krishna, the holy name of the Lord, and the Lord are not different. Therefore, when a devotee chants the Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these eatables, and the devotee becomes Krishnaized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such a service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures.
So this is, and you will notice this. If you cannot do this, then he gives next. So he has a place for everything. Cannot be under the pressure, give permission. Cannot be that, be a sponge. There's always something allowed. It's not that Krishna is speaking of things which are impractical, necessary, and so on. Everything that Krishna presents in Bhagavad Gita is for a relevant purpose. So Krishna did not waste Arjuna's time or our time by speaking the first 6 chapters. Meant for some people. Only thing, you have to think, am I supposed to go to that room? Why I should go through that pathway? If I can go through a faster pathway, if I am capable of it, or if I am capable of making myself capable, let me go through the faster pathway. Okay, I'll stop with that. I'm trying to do the rest of the talk and move the other.